types of fixed income securities and bonds. I'm sure, friends, you would remember and you would always remember fixed income securities, debt instruments, and bonds. These terms are used interchangeably because when it's a bond or when it's a debt, obviously in case of bond and in case of debt, they are going to give you fixed in rate of return, and that's how they are known as fixed income securities. And I'm sure you would always remember as to why the fixed income security is also referred as a bond, and they are always referred as a bond because there is a bond between the issuer and the subscriber, where the issuer is taking certain obligations, and he is taking this obligation in favor of the subscriber. And what those obligations are he's kind of signing a bond with the subscriber that on your subscribing to my bonds or to my securities, I hereby undertake, number one, to pay you interest on the given dates, and number two, also redeem this bond on a given date. So that is why the fixed income securities are also referred as bonds. So you call it bond market, you call it debt market, you call it fixed income securities. These terms are used interchangeably. Why I'm discussing this with you, so that generally, there's a total clarity and there's no confusion that, okay, debt market is something else, bond market is something else, fixed income securities market is something else. No, it's not. They all are same. So what are the types of bonds or fixed income securities or fixed income instruments or fixed income debts are issued in the market? So number one, you can have a floating rate bond. I'm sure all of us understand floating rate bond would simply mean that the rate of interest, rate of coupon on this bond is not fixed. It floats. It is linked with some benchmark rate, and based on that benchmark rate, it will keep on changing. Fixed rate bond will have a fixed rate of the coupon on this. So whatever happens to the benchmark, whatever happens to the market, whatever happens to the economy, doesn't really matter. So long as the tenure of this bond is enforced, the rate of the coupon or interest would remain fixed. Zero coupon or deep discount bond, I have already explained to you. So a lot of companies do issue zero coupon bonds and deep discount bonds. Government of India Treasury bills in any case are zero coupon bond, and deep discount bonds, remember, are issued more by the infrastructure companies, where infrastructure companies, as you can understand, their cash flow, they have a long gestation period. So their cash flow takes long time, and therefore they are not in a position to pay any interest on the money that they get by way of zero coupon bonds. And so that is why they make up for the subscriber by giving them deep discount bonds and redeem those deep discount bonds at the issue price, and that's how the subscriber will make up for the loss of interest for the entire duration of that entire tenure of that bond. Convertible bonds, non-convertible bonds. So convertible bonds are the ones which get converted into equity shares as per the agreed terms of the issue, and non-convertible debentures or non-convertible bonds are the ones which do not get converted. That means they will be essentially redeemed on the given date. Callable and putable bond. What is it supposed to be? Is very simple. A bond which has a call option built into it, it is referred as callable bond. A bond that has got a put up option built into it is referred as putable bond, and that's it. So now the question is, can a company issue a bond which has got both the options, the call options as well as the put option? And answer, friends, of course, is yes. So there is no restriction from the side of any of the authority or any of the statute that a company cannot issue the callable bond and putable bond. So they can issue. And why they can issue? Because ultimately any bond is a contract, and so long as the contract is as per the provisions of the Contract Act 1972, I suppose so. So in that case, the bonds can be issued with the put option, with the call option, and with both the options. And I've explained to you what is the meaning of a bond with call option and what is the meaning of a bond with a put option. Perpetual bonds. So that means what? That means these bonds do not have a fixed maturity. So these bonds are issued for perpetuity. So a question can come to your mind Does it mean if I subscribe to a perpetuity bond, I will need to hold these bonds for perpetuity? Of course not. Of course not. Invariably, perpetual bonds will always have an put option built into them or call option built into them. So that means at any point in time, subject to the terms and conditions of the issue of that bond, the issuer will have a right to call these bonds, or the subscriber also will have a right to put these bonds. That means give these bonds back to the issuer and take his money. And plus perpetual bonds will also have a provision for transfer. So that means in case you do not wish to redeem them, you can always transfer it to somebody. Right? So that is how the perpetual bonds are issued. But these bonds do not have apparent maturity date. So they do not have apparent maturity date. Then you have a tax-free bonds, and as you can see from the name itself, what is a tax-free bond? Tax-free bond is a bond where the government of India tries to give incentive to the investor to subscribe to these bonds. And why should that happen? And that is because invariably you will see that the tax-free bonds are issued by the government companies or government corporations or the government agencies or government organizations. And invariably you will see that all these bonds are issued for the purpose of infrastructure. And why do the government offer the tax benefit? Just to give an incentive to the investor to subscribe to these bonds. Because of the tax benefit, they are not only able to get good rate of interest, but they also are able to save some tax, which of course in a way is nothing but a return to them. So that is your tax-free bonds. Junk bonds, as the name suggests, are the bonds which are issued by the companies whose creditworthiness is under a big question mark, whose ability to service these bonds, repay these bonds is under a big question mark. And you can ask this question as to then why should somebody subscribe for these bonds? And the answer of course is, remember, in the market, in the capital market, or in the financial markets, you have all kinds of investors who are there. So there are certain investors who are risk averse. There are certain investors who are who do not mind taking the risk. So junk bonds will offer higher rate of interest than what a normal bond would offer, and therefore anyone who is prepared to take that risk would like to go for junk bonds. Income bonds, remember, when you look at the term income bond, you might think that income bonds are the bonds that would give you income. Not really, because all bonds give you income, right? So income bonds are the ones where, again, they're like junk bonds. So income bond will have an inherent condition that this bond, issuer of these bonds, will pay any interest or whatever only in case if the issuer has income. If the issuer does not have an income, then he will not pay any return on these bonds. So I'm sure again you can ask a question as to why should somebody subscribe to these income bonds. Remember, the rate of interest is higher than the normal bonds, and therefore someone who is not risk averse, he would not mind to subscribe to these income bonds. Subordinated bonds would mean that these bonds have a security, but that security is already that security is not the prime security. That security is the secondary security. So these are subordinated bonds. Bearer bonds simply would mean that these bonds are transferable by just these can be transferred simply by handing over to someone. So bearer is supposed to be the owner of these bonds, and that's how these are known as bearer bond. So they do not need for transfer, they do not need execution of any document or something like that. Yankee bonds, I'm sure this term might make you think that these must be the bonds issued by a company from China, by a company from China or Taiwan or somewhere from that part of the world. No, Yankee bonds simply would mean when a company is issuing bond not in its own country but in another country. So when a company is issuing, so when an Indian company goes and issues bonds and tries to raise money in the American market or in European market, these bonds which are issued by Indian company in European market or in American market, or these bonds issued by a Chinese company in American market or European market, or vice versa, they would be referred as Yankee bonds. Inflation linked bonds are nothing but floating rate bonds, because inflation linked bond would mean that the rate of interest or rate of coupon in case of these bonds will be linked with the rate of inflation. So if the inflation goes up, the rate of interest will also go up, or rate of coupon will also go up on these bonds. If the inflation goes down, then the rate of interest or rate of coupon applicable on these bonds will also come down. Asset-backed securities would mean, I'm sure friends, all of you would know this, there is something called as securitization. So what is securitization? Securitization, many times all these home loan companies, car loan companies, and credit card companies, and many other lenders who lend money to the retail investors, retail borrowers, what they do in order to increase the lendable funds available with them, they securitize the receivables that have to come to them from the home loan borrowers, car loan borrowers, or credit card borrowers. So what they do, they securitize all those receivables and sell those to someone, these securities to someone, and by way of a bond, and that is referred as asset-backed securities. And in the process, they get money from the subscriber, issue these asset-backed securities to the subscriber, and they get money. So the banks get more money in their hands, and that they are able to use for the purpose of onward lending for the home loans, car loans. So obviously what will happen is the original lender who is lending to the retailer will charge a rate of interest, let's say 10%. But when he issues and raises money against these receivables by using asset-backed securities from other market players, those bonds or securities will have a coupon rate maybe of 7% and 7.5%. So they raise money at the rate of 7 and 7.5%, and they are able to lend it at the rate of 10%. So 2.5% becomes their spread. So that is what is your asset-backed securities. Fixed income securities with call, put, or both the options is referred as embedded securities or embedded option. So friends, these are the types of, or the broad categories of the fixed income securities or bonds that we have in the domain of financial markets. In case if you have any doubt or any question with regard to any of these types of securities that I've discussed with you, please go ahead. I would be very happy to take your question. Else we will move to the next topic.